Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to be continuing on with our C# tutorial series, and in this tutorial we are going to be looking at the math class in .NET with C#. So the math class, like I just mentioned, is a class that is built into .NET, and it allows you to perform, well, a bunch of different all kinds of math operations. Anywhere from rounding to finding minimum and maximum values to finding a ceiling value or a or a floor value, that kind of stuff, right? So let's actually get into some practical examples. I'm going to show you a few different methods. And these are particularly useful, so let's get going with this then. So let's say we have three integers, a, b, and c. So int a equals 13, int b is equal to 2, and int c is equal to 125. Okay, so here we are. We have three integers. In fact, let's create a fourth just to have an even number of integers here. So int d, we'll set that equal to 7. Okay, int d equals 7. There we go. Okay, so now we have we have four different integers. Let's get started with our first method in the math class. And that is the max method. So max is used when you want to figure out what the minimum, or rather what the maximum value of two given values is. And then the min method is the exact opposite. So let's say we want int e to be set to the maximum value of two given values, right? So to do that, we can say math dot max. So math dot max, like that. And then inside of the parentheses, this is what we call this is a method. It essentially a method, in short, without going too far into it, performs a specific action and it's reusable throughout your code. That's what the WriteLine method in the console class is as well. But again, we'll look at methods later on. Just keep in mind that it has a specific function. Right? So we're going to pass this two different values, and we'll say A and B. And so the reason why we can do this right here is because the max method of the math class will return the integer that is larger. So if we go ahead then and we console.WriteLine e, what it should do is, so if we look at our A and B, A is 13, and then B is 2. So we should see 13 in our console. I'm going to invert my colors so we can zoom in on the response, or on the console output that we get. And so you can see the value that it outputs is, in fact, 13. And that's because it found that 13 is larger than 2. As we all know that it is. So that is, that's max. That's the max method. Right? So now, what if we want to find the minimum then? The minimum value. Well, that's where the min method of the math class comes in. So we can do int. So we have A, B, C, and D. We can say, and then E, so we can do F equals math.min. And give it parentheses. And in these parentheses, just like max, we need to give it 2 different values. So let's say we did A and B, so we can do C and D, like that. Pretty simple. And then what that will do is if we go up to C and D, so C is 125. And D equals 7. So when we console right line this, we can do a console right line F, like that. So when we run our code then, in our console, not only will we see 13, but we will also see 7 being outputted to the console, because 7 is smaller than 125. So go ahead and do your Control F5, and there it is. Now, reasonably, you might be asking, well, that's great and all that we can compare 2 values, but what if I want to compare more than 2 values? So, like, say, 3 or 4 values. Well, you can do that too. Right? So, let's say okay, let's go into our program CS. Let's say we want to have a few more variables. So int G and int H. And let's say we want to find the minimum and maximum value of all four of these different of A, B, C, and D, right? Well, you can do that like this. So you would have math.max, and then in here you would give it, for example, A, comma, and then its second argument is going to be another call to math.max, like that. And inside of those parentheses, then we're going to have a B, comma, and another math.max. Okay. So we did A, B, and now we need C, comma, and one last math dot, or rather, then we also just need the D right there. Okay. So, okay, yes, Visual Studio. Yep. Okay, right? So now we have math.max with A and a math.max call as a second parameter. And then inside that second call, we have B with a third math.max being called as its second parameter. And then we have C and D as that third call's parameters. So what this is going to do then is, first, it's going to find the maximum value between C and D. And that value will be substituted as the second math.max's call second parameter. Then it'll find the maximum between B and whatever the maximum between C and D was. And then finally, it'll find the maximum value between A and the resulting value of the second math.max call. And that value will then be assigned to G. The same concept will apply if we want to do the same thing, the same similar task, with minimum values. So math.min and we can have A, comma, math.min, B, comma, math.min, C, D, like that. And so the execution process is exactly the same as it was with the max. Just again, it finds the minimum values instead of the maximum. Okay? So we can then go ahead and console.writeLine G, console.writeLine H. Just like that. Okay. Excuse me. And so we can now do our Control F5. I am going to invert my screen colors again. And we're going to zoom in on our output. So, here we can see the different numbers that we got, right? So we have 13, 7, and then the last two, where we wanted to find the maximum and minimum values of between A, B, C, and D. And we did that. It outputted 2 for the minimum, which is exactly right, and then 125 for the maximum, which again is absolutely correct. You can play around with these values as well to kind of get the idea of how that works. And you can play around also with with the concept of using passing in another math.max method call as a parameter to the math.max function to kind of also give you the general idea of how that works. But yeah, so that's how min and max work. Okay. That is min and max. Pretty cool. Excuse me. Okay. So now, let's go ahead and create some new variables that we're going to try. And we'll say int, or rather, we'll call them decimal here. Decimal, let's say x equals 3 point... Okay, I had my number lock on for some reason. So 3.14159 And that's all we really need for right now. And let's say we want to find a ceiling value. Now, what does math.ceil do? And that's to find a ceiling value. What does it do? Well, it will always round a value up. Right? So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this works in code. So math dot ceil or math dot ceiling. And so let's see here. Where's my cursor at? There we go. Okay. And so if we go ahead and put x in here, and we assign this to an integer, or rather, not even an integer, a decimal of y, and we console.writeLine y. Let's go ahead and do a control F5. Okay. So let's see. This needs an M. Alright. Now again, I'm going to invert my colors. And in our output console, you can see that math.ceiling, what it did is, like I mentioned, it rounded it up to the nearest whole number. And that is 4. 3.14159, when you do a ceiling on it, will always round up to 4. And so then, by that logic, I'm going to invert again, so we have our nice dark background in our IDE here. Let's say, alright, we can go ahead again and do a decimal, and we'll say, z is equal to math.floor and what math.floor will do is it will round it down to the nearest whole number. Right? So inside of math.floor, let's give it x. And then we can do another console. Excuse me, I am so sorry, guys. I'm, still not feeling all that great, but console.writeLine z. Go ahead and run your code now. Okay, yep. And so we can go ahead and zoom in on our console output. And you can see, like I mentioned, it rounded it down to 3 because floor we'll round it down to the nearest whole number. So that's pretty neat. Right? And so those are some of the more useful, I guess, to the average programmer in the math class. There are also methods for calculating cosine, sine, and tangent. There's all kinds of different methods that you can call from math. So if we go into our program CS, you can see we have math dot, and then if you just look inside of this, inside of the IntelliSense, you can see all the different kinds of methods. You can find absolute values, you can do sine, cosine, tangent. You can do all kinds of stuff with the math class. There's all kinds of methods. I encourage you to read the documentation, because if you read the documentation, you'll be able to more easily understand the different methods and how they work, as well as experimenting with them. But this video was simply to introduce you to the math class and just a few of the things that you can do with it. So thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.